Do you want to set your child up for success? IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback.
Well, I know with Eleanor, when she was struggling so much with math, if she had been able to do online learning at home, she would have been much better able to keep up with the class, and that would have just made the whole situation much easier for her. Don't miss out. 1 in 4 students in the U.S. are learning with IXL. IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Happier listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/happier. Visit IXL.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about ideas and strategies for becoming happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week, we'll talk about why we might document, then destroy our bad feelings. And we share many examples from listeners about how they are training for a tough transition. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the 5 senses, human nature. I'm in my little home office here in New York City, and joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And Gretch, I am battling a bit of a cold, so apologies if my voice is a little froggy.
Okay, all right. Well, before we launch in, a few updates. I am very excited about hitting the road for the paperback release for my book, Life in 5 Senses. I will be in Atlanta, Georgia on June 6th with Karis Books and More at First Baptist Church of Decatur. And on June 7th, I will be in Dallas, Texas at Interrobang Books. You can get all the details at happiercast.com/book events. I love doing a book event. I love connecting with readers and listeners, so come if you can.
And Gretchen, we also got this update from Jennifer. She said, I wanted to let you know how much I am loving this year's Write 2 to 4 or Write 24 challenge. Instead of using it for writing, I'm using it to tackle a different aim, getting caught up on photo albums. I love making one for each year, but I'm way behind despite putting them on my annual lists. This year's Write 2 to 4 was a lightning bolt moment for me. I work on the albums for 2 to 4 minutes each day. I'm spending significant time on my computer. I'm an upholder and didn't want to feel like I had to make up rules about weekends or holidays. My progress has been huge because of the slow, steady progress. I often work past my allotted 4 minutes to finish one more page. And of course, working on them regularly makes it easier to remember where I left off each time. So more of my project time is productive and less is spent trying to remember where I was. I can't promise I'll finish the 2023 album before the end of the year, but I already finished 2021 and I'm confident I'll get through 2022.
Well, I love this. And right, because for Write 24, for 24, we said you can write for 24 minutes or you can write from 2 to 4 minutes. And of course, if you want to use that time to do something else, that is terrific too.
Yes.
Photo albums are something that we know weigh on our consciences, weigh on a lot of people's consciences. It's on my 24 for 24 list this year, as it is every year. This is something where slow and steady wins the race. I know exactly what she's talking about, where if you're doing it regularly, you know where you are and you know how to do it. But if you do it very occasionally, you sort of have to reteach yourself every time. So it's more frustrating and less productive. And it's just a fact that we often overestimate what we can do in a short amount of time, like a weekend, and we underestimate what we can get done if we just make slow, steady progress. And so I think this is terrific that she used the idea of the annual challenge and just adapted it to her own aim. That's fantastic.
Yes, that's great.
And then Monica wrote in, because we had the exchange about feeling so bad about the fact that you lost a ring, but then comforted by the idea that perhaps the ring sacrificed itself for you. Monica just has a hack about losing rings. She said, I once lost a ring for years, only to find it later as our washing machine was getting fixed. The repairman thought it might have been in a pocket and then somehow made its way to the inner workings of the machine. So if you are frantically searching for a ring, this is probably a good place to look, because it could slide off your hand,
Right.
off your finger when you're pulling your hand out of your pocket. I can imagine how that would happen. So it's just, if you're looking everywhere, maybe you want to look inside the washing machine too.
And you may find some of those mysterious socks while you're at it.
Yes. Who knows what's in there? So this week, our Try This at Home suggestion is to document, then destroy your bad feelings.
So why is this a good idea?
Okay. So what research shows is that this kind of action will actually help alleviate your bad feelings. So what you would do is, let's say you're feeling angry or irritated, frustrated, annoyed. On a piece of paper, write down your complaints, your arguments, your criticisms, whatever it is that's weighing you down, and then destroy the piece of paper. You could shred it. You could crumple it up into a ball and then toss it. You just want to physically destroy and rid yourself of it.
Gretchen, I think burning it sounds even better, because then it's really gone.
Ooh, and there's something so symbolically satisfying about burning something.
Yes. Love a burn ritual.
Yeah, and I'm particularly interested in any way that we can use our actions to influence our thoughts and our moods, because in my study of happiness, what I realized is that a lot of times we want to do something or we want to change our state of mind, but it's very hard to go directly into your inner workings, but we have a lot more control over our conscious thoughts and actions. And so doing something like this, where you're taking like an internal thing, like, I'm so irritated and frustrated with this person, but you're externalizing it in that way, affecting it. I just think it's a lot easier to go from the outside in than from the inside out. So I think this is really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, there's something about being annoyed by someone else, but then also you can be annoyed with yourself.
Oh, 1,000%.
Regretting something you said to someone at a party.
Oh, yes.
Or
Oh,
upset
my gosh.
with a big faux pas you made.
Yes.
Angry that you didn't get something done on time. There's lots of reasons why we beat ourselves up.
Well, this has just happened to me. I was at a party. And do you ever have this thing where you need to make polite conversation, and so you're grasping at straws? Maybe you're talking to people who are a little introverted. So I know that it's kind of on me to keep carrying the ball. Like, everybody's very well intentioned, but you're sort of, often in those moments, I say something inopportune. I'm not rude, but I just say something, and don't want to get into what I said. But I walked away from it being like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe that I said that. And it's just a bad feeling, because what are you going to do? So,
yeah.
Ick.
So, Gretchen, you and I actually did this. We each
Yes.
picked something that we wanted to rid ourselves of. I wanted to rid myself of a work thing that was bothering me. It wasn't even a huge deal, but it's been nagging at me. It's been weighing me down. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper with a Sharpie, and then I burned it in our fire pit last night.
Okay. And do you feel better?
I do. I think just the act of doing it and then
Yeah.
watching it burn and then saying, okay, that's done. I'm going to
Yes.
relieve myself
Yes.
of this. I said on the paper, let go of this thing. I actually
interesting.
wrote let go on the paper.
Oh, that's interesting. What I did for mine is, Jamie is a questioner, and part of being a questioner, not all questioners do this, but some questioners do this a lot, which is that he doesn't answer questions. And a way that this evinces itself in Jamie, and again, maybe this is just Jamie, maybe this is a questioner thing, is he will not loop me in if he's texting someone or CCing someone on something where I obviously want that information. And then he's like, oh, I already took care of that. Or, oh, XYZ. And I'm like, why did you not just loop me in? Why did you not just CC me? Because I want access to that information as well.
Yeah.
And you can probably tell just from the way I'm describing it, it's very annoying. And I have to say, I'm still somewhat annoyed at it. But for me, the process of writing it down also slowed me down and reminded me there are many advantages to him being a questioner. For me as an upholder, that's really good. And this is something that is just like, this is the guy I married. He's not doing it to annoy me. He just goes through and he just isn't thinking like, who should I CC? And then I shredded it. I have a shredder. And so I shredded it. And I do think it did relieve my feelings in a weird way. It just helped me feel, I'm still exercised about it, but not with as much bad feeling. I would say.
Okay.
And as I was doing it, it made me realize how much power a ritual has.
Yes.
There's something about it. First of all, it gives us a sense of control, which is like, okay, I am doing something. I am taking an action, which just makes life feel more manageable. In your case, you literally wrote let go. It gives you this feeling of letting go of something that's negative. It marks an ending. Like, if I had written down about that comment that I made at the party, it would be like, and now this is at an end. Like, I will no longer stew about it. It's run its course, kind of like the way you go to sleep and the next day you feel better. And what a lot of research shows is just by writing things down, that also gives us a sense of control and sort of seeing the meaning. And I think when I wrote it down for Jamie, it reminded me of what is the meaning of this quirk that he has, which is that it's tied to this whole family of things that are strengths and weaknesses, at least in my mind. So again, it gave more perspective. So there's a lot of reasons why this kind of thing can be helpful.
Yeah, and I think whenever you do something and you give it meaning, it just makes life feel more, you have more depth.
More depth and more orderliness, too.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be interesting to try it with a child. I'm going to try this as a parent. You could just say, okay, let's write that down, and then we're just going to rip it into shreds and toss it in the trash.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I could imagine that appealing to Eliza and Eleanor, too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will post a link in the show notes to an article that describes this research and goes into it if you'd like to read a little bit more. I think it's really interesting because, again, it's making a ritual of something. It's externalizing something. It gives us a way to take action. So let us know if you do try this at home and how documenting, then destroying a note about your negative emotions works for you. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@gretchenrubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes on my website. This is happiercast.com/484 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, we've got a happiness hack that will help you stay in touch with loved ones. But first, this break.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. They can dress themselves. They can clean up after themselves, allegedly. Other things don't, like having conversations about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage their money unless they're actually in charge of it. That's where Greenlight can help. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on their kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills.
Yeah, Jack has Greenlight, and one thing I love is that it includes a chores feature where you can set up one-time or recurring chores and reward kids with allowance for a job well done. Gretchen, we used to mow the lawn. How much more motivated would we have been if we'd had funds deposited when we completed that chore? Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/happier. That's greenlight.com/happier to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/happier.
Eating processed food for every meal isn't healthy for people or for dogs. We all know that. And kibble is subject to multiple rounds of high heat processing, making it an ultra processed food. The farmer's dog is real, fresh, healthy food with whole meat and veggies gently cooked in human-grade kitchens to preserve their nutritional value. My dog Barnaby loves the farmer's dogs. When he sees me pulling one of those packets out, he comes running. It's personalized, vet developed, and it has recipes for as little as $2 a day. Meals arrive in pre-portioned, ready to serve packs, and they're conveniently delivered on whatever schedule works for me.
Get 50% off your first box of fresh, healthy food at thefarmersdog.com/happier. That's 50% off your first box at thefarmersdog.com/happier. Okay, Gretch, we are back with this week's happiness hack.
Yes, this came up from listener Erin. I thought this was a great hack. She said, a problem that I identified was not texting or calling family members who live in Hawaii or overseas because I can't remember what time it will be for them, and I fear disrupting sleep or their workday, etc. The simple act of Googling their time zone and mentally doing the time math was enough of a barrier that I'd say, oh, I'll check in with them later, which became almost never. Easy solution. I store their locations as favorite places on my weather app on my phone. I happen to use Apple Weather. And when I pull up their city, it tells me the current time in their city and bonus what the weather is like. I essentially now keep tabs on the weather of all my favorite contacts. This hack is particularly helpful for Hawaii family because their state does not participate in daylight savings, and I no longer have to remember if it's 4 or 5 hours behind me. I love your show. I've listened to every episode. Well, Erin, thank you for listening to every episode. We appreciate that.
Yes.
And Elizabeth, I did this because I figured out how you can have all of your favorite places displaying on whenever you go to the weather app. They'll just list them because I was always going into sort of the deep look at it like New York City or New Haven or whatever, but you can have them listed kind of as chapters. And there it is. I had never noticed it. It does have their time listed. It's so handy.
Yes, Gretchen, I have used this many times. If I am wondering, for instance, our parents were recently in Paris.
Yeah.
While they were there, I put the Paris weather on my phone. One, I did want to know the weather, but also then I could look and see if I thought they were up and if I could text them or if they were asleep.
Yeah.
And it is very handy. And it's also nice to know the weather.
It is.
There's something that makes you feel connected when you know what kind of weather someone is dealing with at the moment.
This is so strange, but I've 100% noticed that. And I remember like at different points where mom, because I live in New York City, because mom watches the morning show, she'd be like, oh, I saw that it's snowing or something. And it always made me feel like, oh, she knows that it's snowing where I am. And it was this fun point of connection. But it's funny because you don't think of like, look up the weather to make you feel closer to someone, but it does. And also it tells you what time it is. This is like a lot of times there's like more information on things than you realize if you just take a moment and poke around and see what's there. So I just thought this was a very elegant solution. Wonderful. Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.
And now a know yourself better question. Okay, I am so excited about this question because you know how I love to categorize people. Some people say, to find me, you can find me. But I think it's really helpful to say, am I a marathoner or a sprinter? Am I an abstainer or a moderator? Am I a upholder, questioner, obliger, rebel? Am I a morning person or a night person? Am I a finisher or an opener? Am I a simplicity lover or an abundance lover? I think these things are very useful. Yes. And Elizabeth, you know this because I am constantly trying these out on you.
Yes. Well, they're interesting.
They're interesting.
And I love this one.
Okay. So this is a new one. So I will preface this by saying it uses metaphors, but the metaphors do not match. They are not in the same family. So if anybody has an idea for how to have metaphors within the same family, I would very much welcome anybody's suggestions. And as I explain it, this will become obvious. So the question is, are you a book person or a tree person? And this has to do with how you view your life, the ongoing flow of your life.
Yes.
Okay. So book people are people who see their book like a book of short stories. And it's full of many chapters. And at a certain point, they're like, and now I will turn the page and I will turn a new chapter. And so maybe they're like, I had this kind of job, now I'm turning the page and I have that kind of job, which is completely different. Or I was living in this city and then I moved and now I live in this city. Or now I'm retired and I'm moving to that city. And they're turning the pages and they'll just start anew. And they may like that. They might like the idea, oh, it's time for a new chapter. Okay, great, we're moving on. Then there are tree people. And tree people are more like a tree that is growing from one place. A tree is in one place and it's growing. So at some point, the ring might be wider because there's a lot of growth. At some point, the ring might be smaller because there's less growth. And the point of the tree is to grow toward the sky and to have many branches and many leaves, but it's all coming from one place and growing in place. And so, you know, Elizabeth, I'm very interested in this open door stage, this empty nest stage. And as I was talking to people about how they were viewing their past and their futures, I realized that people really did have these different perspectives. So, Elizabeth, what are you? Are you book or tree?
I am definitely tree.
Uh-huh.
In other words, I would feel, for instance, if Adam and I retired and moved to Costa Rica, let's say.
Yeah.
I would feel then like all this other stuff that I did in Los Angeles didn't matter.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I would feel like I lost all of this investment into my life.
Yes.
So now when I was young, I was still sort of evolving and planting myself.
Yeah.
So I moved to LA, but I can't imagine just up and doing something totally different. And that, again, in being with one person, I like the idea that Adam and I will have these memories together for decades.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes you have to turn a chapter and you have no choice.
Yes.
But given the choice, I
Yeah.
prefer the tree and just
Yes.
like adding as opposed to doing something totally new.
Whereas some people welcome that. Like they really seek that out.
Yes.
So I'm a tree person too. And Elizabeth, it's interesting thinking about you. It was really hard for you to move from New York to LA. And I wonder if it was harder for you because you're basically a tree person and that was a book thing to do.
Yes.
But I remember you saying, like, I would not now move back to New York City. I would stay in LA.
Yes.
For me, it was like, oh, okay, she's really there now.
And I think it helped that I moved with Sarah, who was a friend from Kansas City, because she is a
interesting.
tree person with me. I mean, she may not be a tree person, but she's one of my tree people. So I
Yes.
had that sense of some sort of continuity.
Well, that is fascinating. So I am definitely a tree person. And like, I wouldn't even want to leave my neighborhood
Yes.
in New York City because New York City, they're so big, you could move. And I know people who are moving within New York City. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I would move like more than 10 blocks in any direction because I am so tree. And I love the feeling of like, oh, I remember 20 years ago when this happened. Or, I like that feeling of building and building. And in fact, Elizabeth, sometimes people will say to you, if you had to live in any other city in the United States or any place in the world, where would you move? I would often say, really? I think my second choice is Kansas City. And now I understand why. That's a very tree response, which is, that is the other tree. That is the deeper tree. So that kind of explains something to me about myself because I was like, that's kind of an interesting answer. Also, I think it explains why some kinds of circumstances might be harder for some people than others because it might hit you differently depending on whether you're a tree person or a book person, whether you're sort of being forced into a different model. Like you could be a book person that for whatever reason never leaves their hometown, kind of feels like they have to stay there. And so it's kind of against their grain. Or you're a tree person who's serving in the military.
Right.
And so you're moving a lot, but that goes against your tree nature. Whereas to a book person, that might be fine for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. And I think it can help you understand other people in your life.
Yes.
Because it can make decisions a lot more understandable when you think of them in this way.
Well, this is exactly what happened to me because I was talking to a friend, a very close friend, who'd suddenly up and moved. To me, I was like, whoa, like I wouldn't just decide to move and move like that. And then I was thinking back on like her work history and her life history. And then she's like, oh yeah, and maybe in the future, maybe we'll move to Portugal. And I was like, whoa, you're very different from me. And then I was like, you're a book person and I'm a tree person. So listeners, we want to hear from you. Does this ring true? Does this resonate? This is like a new category. Do you have an idea whether there could be two metaphors within the book set of ideas or two within tree? I think tree maybe might be easier. Or is it okay that they're kind of from different worlds? Because in a way, part of me thinks that it would be more literary if they matched, but I think the book of short stories and the tree so capture that I'm like, maybe I just let them not match. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a book of short stories and a novel because the novel keeps going.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's obvious. Why did I not think of that? Because I was like, is it an encyclopedia? No, you're right. Is it a book of short stories versus a novel? Oh.
But I do like the tree, Gretch. The tree is a very beautiful metaphor.
It is, and it has the idea of like deepening roots.
And expanding.
Yes.
Whereas a novel is written.
A novel is going from beginning to end, right? So it's kind of technically accurate, but it doesn't have the overlay of the tree. So anyway, okay, something to ponder. Now we have some listener answers because in episode 482, our Try This at Home, we talked about why we might train for a tough transition. Talking about a friend of mine who was training for a tough transition when she realized that she was going to ask her husband for a divorce, and she spent a year training for it because she knew it was going to be the hardest thing she ever went through. And so we heard from a lot of listeners about how they had trained for a tough transition or how they might plan to train for a tough transition.
Yes, Emily said, I've been training for the tough transition of pregnancy. My husband and I are planning to start trying for a baby within the year. I'm deeply anxious about the toll it will take on my body, particularly my back, but I feel a sense of control by adding weightlifting and rucking to my workout routine. Rucking is taking walks with a weighted weighted vest or backpack. It's very good for you, and it's easier on your knees than running.
Great idea.
Perfect example.
Meg said, I love listening to your Try It at Home from today's podcast about training for a tough transition. As I listened, I realized that I had done this myself over the past few years, and I cannot recommend it enough. 3 years ago, I received a promotion to what I thought would be my dream job. By the end of the first year, I was less sure, and by the midpoint of the second, I was truly in a state of crisis. Like I nearly rage quit. It was bad. After walking back from the edge of that cliff, I realized that my entire life was in disarray and that simply walking away would only add to the chaos. I stopped drinking, started more religiously enforcing boundaries, returned to church, and began caring for myself more. I finished my graduate degree, began more active networking, and spent a lot of time in introspection and writing in my journal. After a year of this, an open happened in a meeting for me to gracefully step away from the current job and into one that really calls to more of my passions that I was only really aware of because of the work I'd been doing on myself. I was allowed to write my own job description, keep my higher salary for a position that was much less stressful, and remain at a company I love. But I couldn't have done it if I hadn't trained. Plus, she said she has the beanbag chairs where you put the stuffed animals. So she gets a thumbs up to that too.
Nice.
Yeah, but this is a great example of training for anticipating that you need to quit.
Yes. Rochelle said, like Gretchen, I have 2 daughters and my youngest left for college in 2017. I knew I needed to prepare for this transition into the open door stage of life because I always spent a lot of time with my girls. I have a busy career as a literary agent, so it's not as if my life would be empty, but I still knew I needed to prepare and train for this transition. Several months before the move-out date, I went to meetup.com and joined several groups in my area, a monthly dinner group, a movie-going group, and a couple of hiking groups. This turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done as I transitioned from enjoying these activities with my daughters to doing them with new friends. Eventually, I even did what Gretchen recommends. I started my own hiking group as well as a movie group. These activities filled my life for a few years and I made new friends, along with developing a great hiking habit, which continues to this day. For anyone preparing for this new stage of life, I highly recommend this approach.
Excellent. Having this forethought is very helpful when you know that the transition is coming. Jules said, I wanted to comment on the subject of training for difficult life transitions as I identified wholeheartedly with this, having gone through something similar. My best friend passed away aged 59, and I was left with her beloved horse to look after and rehome in his retirement. Whilst this was quite stressful, I have found the whole process of rehoming and subsequently looking after him through some health problems has actually changed my life because I found that the way to deal with the stress better was to level up my game in terms of fitness, health, nutrition, and self-care. I was just too busy to be anything but on top of my game to do my best for him, all whilst grieving for my friend. This has meant getting fit through stable work and focusing on things like journaling to help my mental stress. And I have even taken courses in counseling with a view to becoming a grief counselor relative to losing a pet in the UK. I have turned a negative into a positive and potentially found a new rewarding career. Well, look at that.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Laura said, I absolutely loved your episode about training for a tough transition. My husband is in the Air Force and he is getting ready to deploy for 6 months. This transition will be extremely hard for my husband, my children, and myself. Some of the ways we plan to train include creating a large calendar where we can count down the days and add weekly FaceTime dates. We will also add special events and special weekly activities such as pizza nights, living room dance parties, and play dates with friends. I will also establish a self-care routine and commit to finding reliable babysitters for when I need some alone time to recharge during the deployment. Thanks again for such a wonderful idea.
Well, this is a great idea, and she's thinking about how this is going to influence her whole family's life.
Yes.
So that's really great. And here's one final one from someone who is anonymous. My husband is a heart transplant recipient. And incidentally, Gretchen, thank you for shining a spotlight on organ donation so regularly. Oh, yes. Everybody sign the organ donor registry. 13 years ago, he spent 9 months in the hospital with 7 weeks of that time in an induced coma. This caused a lot of damage to his kidneys, which the immunosuppressant medicine has exacerbated. Miraculously, he's been very well all this time, despite the progression of chronic kidney disease. Recently, that progression has sped up dramatically, and yesterday he was told he will need a kidney transplant far sooner than we had anticipated. I intend to join the kidney exchange program with him. If my kidney isn't suitable for him, it hopefully will be suitable for someone else, starting a chain which results in a compatible kidney for my husband. I don't know yet whether that time will be 6 months or 2 to 3 years away, but I have some training to do. I want to increase my fitness and decrease my weight, as to donate a kidney, I need to be at no risk for type 2 diabetes. I also want to shore up my resilience and mental health and put plans in place for my son who has additional needs. So this is very interesting where you see something big is coming and it's like, okay, I'm going to train for this now. I'm not sure how long I have, but I'm going to train for it.
Yes.
It was so fascinating to hear how listeners have used this idea of training for a tough transition in such a wide variety of challenges. It's really interesting to see how you can do it.
All right, coming up, I give myself a demerit related to procrastination. But first, this break.
You've heard us talk about Great Jones and their stunning high-quality cookware. Well, I have to say, since I got my Saucy, I have found it much more fun to cook. The Saucy is a terrific saucepan with curved sides, a pouring spout. It comes with a lid. It looks gorgeous just sitting there. It makes it easier and more fun to cook. And I realized that that's the exact intention of Great Jones. As a women-run New York-based brand, Great Jones wants to equip and empower people to cook at home and make kitchen our happy place.
So whether you're baking sourdough, cooking scrambled eggs, or looking to transform your kitchen into your happy place at a great price, we can agree that it's time to upgrade from those old rusted hand-me-downs to the bold, beautiful, long-lasting pieces from Great Jones like we did. Get started today at greatjones.com and get an extra 15% off your first order with promo code HAPPIER. That's greatjones.com, promo code HAPPIER. If you've ever been in the market for a new home, you know home shopping can be a lot. There's so much you don't know and so much you need to know. What are the neighborhoods like? What are the schools like? Who is the agent who knows the listing or neighborhood best? And why can't all this information just be in one place?
Well, now it is on Homes.com. They've got everything you need to know about the listing itself, but even better, they've got comprehensive neighborhood guides and detailed reports about local schools. And their agent directory helps you see the agent's current listings and sales history. Homes.com collaboration tools make it easier than ever to share all this information with your family. It's a whole cul-de-sac of home shopping information all at your fingertips. Homes.com. We've done your homework.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Okay, Elizabeth, it's time for Demerits and Gold Stars, and this is an even-numbered episode, which means it's your turn to talk demerit.
Yes, Gretch, this is a demerit I'm sure many people can relate to. I've probably given it to myself before, but I have a question I need to ask my insurance company, my health insurance company, and I have just not made that call. And it's one of those things that will probably take 5 minutes, be very simple. I'll feel so good when I've asked it and it's resolved.
Yeah.
But I just have not been able to make myself get out my card, look up the number, and make that call.
Okay. Well, let's hope that by giving yourself the demerit process works its magic, and you're like, I can just put the card out on my desk today.
Yes.
And then tomorrow I can just, whatever.
Right. Baby steps.
There is something about insurance, though, right?
I know. It's usually easier than I anticipate, but I anticipate it being horrendous. So
be grateful for insurance. That's one thing. It's turn it into a gratitude process.
That's true. I should make it a gratitude meditation on insurance. That's a good idea.
Yes.
All right, Gretchen, what is your gold star this week?
Okay, I want to give a gold star to our parents because our parents, they love to travel. They're very intrepid. And one of the things that they do is they always learn how to use public transportation when they go to a city.
Yes.
Most recently, they were just in Paris. They used the Paris metro. They were in London a couple of years ago. They used not the
Tube.
down, the tube, not the down under, the tube. They used the tube. The thing about public transportation is once you get the knack of it, it's easy and freeing, but there is always that, I don't like, how do you pay? And like, do you put this card in at the beginning and at the end, or do you just do it at the beginning? And everybody else is just zipping through. So you feel very self-conscious if like you're standing there looking around. Sometimes there's somebody there to help you. Sometimes there's not.
Definitely a learning curve.
There's definitely a learning curve. But then when you do, it's so amazing because you're like, I can just go all over the place. You have such a feeling of mastery and such a sense of just being part of the culture of a city. Because if you're in a city that has a subway, it's a thing.
Yes.
It's like walking into a grocery store too. Like people say, if you want to understand a place, go to a grocery store, which I love. I only recently started doing that. And I think it's a great advice. Also a drugstore. It's just fascinating to see what's in it. But I think using that, but there is a learning curve. And so I say gold star to our parents for always just like the first day saying, okay, we're just going to figure this out so that we can use public transportation for our whole visit. And that's fantastic.
Yes, good inspiration for us.
And the resource for this week. Okay, to help you design your summer, because we love designing the summer, I have created a new way to use the spin the wheel tool in the Happier app. Side note, people love spin the wheel. This is one of the most popular aspects of the Happier app. For the month of June, every spin will provide ideas to add to your summer bucket list or spark a new tradition, suggest distinct activities that will really make the summer feel like memorable and rich and really summery. You can get up to 3 ideas a day by spinning the wheel. You can download the app at thehappierApp.com. And you can start designing your summer on June 1st. And you can share photos and stories on social media of what you're doing at #DesignYourSummer for a chance to be reposted by me. I love seeing what people are doing. I love chances to repost. So check it out in the Happier app. It's going to be really fun starting June 1st.
Yay.
So Elizabeth, what are we reading? That's something fun to do with your summer is to do some summer reading. What are you reading now?
I am reading The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes.
And I am reading Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Document, then destroy your bad feelings. Let us know if you tried it and if it worked for you.
Thanks to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
And if you like the show, you know what I'm going to say. Be sure to tell a friend and rate, review, and follow us. And because I like to say it in a rhyme, here's your new rhyme. If you liked what you heard, spread the word.
Indeed. Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Elizabeth, you know, I have a shredder, and somehow that seems like the underbuyer in me is like, why do I need a shredder? But it's actually really handy to have a shredder. But I've never done anything sort of like fun with a shredder. So I thought, ooh, at last I'm doing something that's creative and almost whimsical with my shredder. So it felt good to like use it in that way instead of just bank statements.
Yes, that is very satisfying. The little whir of the machine as it shreds your bad feelings.
Yes, it really worked. From the Onward Project.